friends, and welcome to Screen Vomit, the only movie podcast for normal people. I'm, of course, your host, Kayla, and I do have a guest with me today, but before I get to that, just real quick, if you like the show, you can follow me on Instagram and everywhere else at ScreenVomit, one word on all the stuff. Check my link tree, which is in the show notes or all my bios, for t-shirts, some badass tees, other ways you can support the show. Leave me a rating and review on your podcast app or tell someone about it. All right, so that's all for me. Quick this week. I am joined this week by filmmaker, punk rocker, CHRIS CARLONE. I met Chris a few months ago at Indie Film Fest when he was showing his new documentary, A Tale of Two Houses. And I was just obsessed with the film. I mean, it's so good. It was really inspiring and I just really loved it. And we became fest besties and just had the best time through the whole fest. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to have him on to talk about it, but also just getting to talk flicks, of course. The movie is still doing festival rounds right now, but you can follow it on Instagram at A Tale of Two Houses doc to keep up with it and see where you can have an opportunity to watch it because it just rocks. It just rocks. We'll talk about it. Okay, here is my episode with CHRIS CARLONE. Okay, welcome to the pod, CHRIS CARLONE. What's up?
Oh my God. It's so exciting to be here and it's so nice to see you again.
Hell yeah.
And thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we just met semi-recently at Indie Film Fest when you were there with your movie, A Tale of Two Houses. True or false?
That is, in fact, true.
Hell yeah. So tell the people about your movie, what it's about.
Okay, let's see. A Tale of Two Houses is about these two party houses on the busiest intersection in Tucson, next to the only late night fast food, greasy sub and pizza restaurant in Tucson. So you've got this corner in 1984 to 1986 where these two party houses were kind of like an incubator for local bands to play, underground punk bands to play in the 80s at a time when there wasn't many places for punk bands and underground bands to play that were consistent. Many of them would last for, 4 or 5 months and then disappear. Mm-hmm. So the movie takes place in 2 years, but these houses for almost 10 years were pretty much consistently taken over by other kids and young people, and keeping this sort of like party house thing going for quite a while. So I actually lived there when I was 18 and 19, and I left Tucson 30 years ago. So coming back, the first thing driving by them, I thought, oh my gosh, I really should make like a little 15-minute documentary about these two houses just because they wwere so important to like a generation of young people like back in the 80s, because it was a constant place of like, well, there's probably going to be a party or a band playing at one of these two houses. Yeah. And they were just so important to a generation. So I thought I should really document these, make a little documentary about these houses. So I did. I started off and I interviewed the main guy who lived at one of the two houses. It was really, he was sort of the like mainstay guy throughout the 10 years, and interviewed him. And then immediately, oh yeah, okay, well, I've talked to him. I need to talk to this person. And then when I talked to that person, oh my gosh, I definitely need to talk to these two people. Yeah. And the next thing I knew, I interviewed about 40 people. And I thought, I just sort of got addicted to talking to the next person and the next person. And I think partly because it kept unlocking more and more interesting stuff, but also looking back on it, I think I was afraid to start editing it. And so what happened was I had created like a feature film. And then I was like, well, who's going to be interested in this feature film about like a bunch of bands that no one's ever heard of from, 1984. But I just decided, you know what, it is now my duty to tell the story of the town I grew up in and just capture this moment in time. And it became more and more fascinating to me looking back on the pre-internet world, just because a good chunk of my life, up till I was my late 20s was a pre-digital world. So it's
Mhm.
like I'm so nostalgic about it
Yeah,
now. Like how everything worked. How did people find out like what was going on? And it was so it's kind of beautiful to look back on it now for some reason.
it is.
I'm kind of nostalgic about it, but yeah, so that's in a nutshell what it's about. It's a movie for if you're like a super music nerd, you're gonna love this movie. It's a lot of fun,
Well, I think also
and it
just like you don't even have to be a music nerd. Like I told you this, but I mean, I loved the movie, but it was also nostalgic for me, and of course, I was not really alive in those years. Some would say, but I have my own experience with like the punk community and having being part of like a punk collective that operated out of a house and all this kind of stuff, and in
exactly.
pre-internet era as well. Still, even though I'm much younger or a little younger, that it also felt nostalgic for me and really relatable to me. Just watching your movie about your time doing these being a part of this punk community and these punk houses and there were so many like one-to-one comparison people from my community to your community. I told you this. um
Yeah, you're like, oh, I have my own version of this guy
yeah,
in my,
yeah, it was
yeah,
really
totally,
crazy. Like
yeah.
your film shows like kind of a girl who's a little maybe younger hanging out with the people living in the house. We also had like a 16-year-old girl who lived in our pantry. You have like a train hopper guy who looks a little rough, like missing some teeth. We had a train hopper guy, same thing. Like it was so crazy how many like one-to-one comparison people there
Totally.
were. I mean, my time in that punk, like finding them, like saved my life. Like that changed everything for me. So I do think it's really cool and really important to like document those communities too, because also I'm not sure that they still really exist. And that's talked about in your film also a little bit. Like somebody talks about sort of the dissolution of like centralized punk communities that we used to have pre-internet, and whether that's due
Right.
to like now there are so many opportunities to like find other folks, I think is what they say in your film.
Yes.
That
Yes.
it used to just be like, oh, you're punk, like me too, cool, we're family. Like
Yeah, it was exactly. It's kind of like, well, I didn't like all the people all the time, but I just, it's sort of like you stopped the guy in the film talks about how, in the world we live in now, it's like you keep looking and you keep
yeah,
looking. You're like, and you can keep doing that. You can keep looking for whatever it is you're looking for. And, back then it's sort of like you just sort of settled for what was right
yeah,
there. And then those people sort of became like, your family or
exactly.
and yeah, and the people you'd be connected to. And I find that really interesting as well. And it was so cool hearing about this collective you lived in and
Yeah,
stuff. And like that makes me really happy to, you know, that you don't have to be Gen X. You could be,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, it was really cool getting to meet you and hearing that story. It really, yeah, you're right. I think there are different ways that people could relate to
Hmm.
this. And yeah, so it was really awesome getting to go to Indie Film Fest and meeting everyone. And it was just sort of like last minute on a whim, like, okay, what? It's in 3 weeks from now. I got it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go figure out a way to go. So yeah, and wasn't really expecting to get into any film fest. So I was so honored and thrilled to be there. And my fingers are crossed. I've still got about 4 or 5 more that I'm waiting to hear from.
Yeah.
So
Nothing on the horizon right now, though.
yeah, no, there is in a couple weeks the Portland Film
Okay,
Festival.
cool.
I'll find out about that. So that's the next one. It's not for sure, but and I just had a screening again here in Tucson, I think it's going to become a cult classic
Hell
here.
yeah.
So
Every
yeah,
year, a couple months or something, you'll every
yeah,
quarter,
totally.
a quarterly
Right,
screening.
every quarter. Exactly. Yeah, there's a really awesome theater here called the Screening Room, and it's on Congress Street, which is the main strip downtown. And they're the coolest people. They'll really just let anyone do anything. Like, hey, we want to have a band play in front of the screen and show, whatever, some weird old film, and like they're just down for anything. And they have their own film fest there, the Tucson International Film Festival, which just ended. Actually, when I was at Indie Film Fest, one of the filmmakers there had just come back from. They were kind of overlapping, actually,
cool.
the film fests. Yeah, so he had just been in Tucson, and he was like, "Oh, I'd never been there before. It was really cool." So, but yeah, so you have to come visit.
I've never been. I've probably flown over on my way to LA, but I really haven't spent much time out west at all.
Yeah, well, when you're, if that happens, when that happens, when
I move,
go to LA. Yes, I didn't know if I should say that or
it's
what.
Okay.
But
I'm pretty open on this. I really don't have many secrets. So
right. Well, when you move to LA, you have 8 hours away. Don't come in the summertime though, because
it'll be too
brutal.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I start sweating in this interview, it's because I had to turn my AC off during the interview. No, it's okay. It's cool. I had it cooling for a while, so it's pretty. It's good.
That is one thing I'm nervous about moving to LA is that I am very sensitive to heat. So it'll be interesting for me.
In Indianapolis? Isn't it really hot in Indianapolis?
It gets hot, but I think the humidity is really the bigger issue. Is that it does get over 100 every once in a while. That's not super common, but it does. Usually in later summer. I'd say in peak summer, we're normally in the 90s probably, but it's like 100% humidity. Like it just feels like you could eat the air, like it's chunky.
Yeah, it's like soup.
Yeah.
It's like soup.
And you're like boiling alive under the sun.
Well, speaking of boiling alive, I think today is going to be I think it's going to be 104 today.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think we're in the 90s humidity. Today. It's 88 right now, I see, as my computer says.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, dry heat probably, I don't know. It seems like that would be better.
They say that just to make everyone feel better. It's like it's a dry heat, but yeah, it's brutal.
Still brutal.
It's like 104 is 104.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll get up to 107 this week. Ugh. So yikes. But anyways, enough about the weather.
But yeah, anyway, I was, just really glad that I was able to catch your movie 1.5 times. And you know what? It was really inspirational to me. And maybe several, 10 to 15 years from now, once I get my ass in gear, we'll be seeing a documentary from my ass on the Pirate community in Indianapolis, which was such a special time.
I will be there.
Maybe one of the last living punk collectives pre-internet, because we went right up and through it. And actually, I feel like our dissolution was pretty much when like social media and stuff became ubiquitous. So like around 2011, something like that.
So that was like MySpace days.
Yeah, well, that was like 2011. We were high in Facebook.
That was yeah. Facebook just was getting going then. Actually,
I think I got a Facebook in like 2008 or 9 or something like that.
Okay. Oh wow. Yeah.
And I was later to it because I've always been like, fuck that, that's dumb as shit, and then I eventually sign on. So I think 2011 was like people were just starting to do Instagram. So yeah, I don't know.
I had just got off Facebook for a year, which was so awesome. But then I went back on so I could find people to make this movie. And it actually really helped. I got in touch with a ton of people that way. So, But
yeah, I did think if I'm going to do a documentary, I better do it, at least start it kind of soon, because Facebook's going to be out of here. I don't know, pretty soon, I feel. People are getting off of it. People have been getting off of it for a long time. I think most of the people I know, like, kind of technically still have one, but, like, don't really use it, but it's just kind of there. But I need it to be able to get in touch with a lot of the old folks I used to know, because I don't really have any other way of finding a lot of the people I used to know anymore.
Sometimes it is the necessary evil, you have to like promotion and all that stuff. But, I think though, what's the name of the collective again?
Piratical.
Pirate. Yeah. Pirate. You should, I think anytime you happen to like, oh my God, I'm going to see this person or whatever, like maybe, it can take as long as you want. Like just bring a camera and do like, let's sit down and talk about for half an hour or whatever. And
I just brought up the idea to my friend Jennifer, who was also part of the squad back in those days, who has this like, Jennifer has an incredible memory. Like, she remembers every person, every place, everything that ever happened, everything someone else said, like through history. I don't know how she does it, but I just like brought up the idea to her, and she was spouting off like all this stuff and all these people I need to get in touch with, and this person I bet has
great.
movies, and this, so Jennifer is going to be a huge resource to me, I'm thinking.
Good. Yeah, Jennifer, if you're out there, get ready. Yeah. We need you.
Yeah, so I've just brought up the idea to a couple friends, and they're already like really, they want to talk about it and think it's a cool idea. It currently relies on me having the energy to do this kind of business. I think I need to wait until after I move, because all my focus is kind of on that. Currently, I've been trying to wind down projects, so I have my energy going in less places, so I can focus on
smart
moving and my health currently. So,
do you know when you might be there?
My goal is, so there's a film fest called Slam Dance. I don't know if you're familiar.
Sure.
So Slam Dance is moving to LA in February. And so my goal is to be there before Slam Dance.
Okay, that's totally doable.
The main thing holding me back right now is I am trying to get a hysterectomy. So I have a doctor's appointment in a couple weeks, and then hopefully I'll have more information then on when that can happen. So I'm trying to get my health taken care of while I still have health insurance.
All very smart moves. Yeah, that's good.
So if that can't happen for a long time, I'm just going to have to figure it out once I get to California. But I'm hoping that it can happen quickly, because my uterus is a monthly issue for me.
Right.
So I would love to just get that shit out of there.
Yeah.
But once that's done, I think I'm just going to take off. I mean, I've been looking for jobs and was trying to like low-key kind of find a job before I moved, but I got to get out. I got to just shit or get off the pot. You know what I'm saying? So
I hear you. Yeah. You have to take care of, focus on one thing, get that done. And then, you know, I've burned the candle at both ends way too many times, and and my energy and my ability to focus on things these days, I gotta go one thing at a time. I used to be more of a billion things at once type of guy, but I super burnt myself out maybe like early last year, and since then, and since COVID, like just my whole brain chemistry has changed. So I'm trying to do one step at a time. It's not always easy for me, but I am trying that approach to life. All that to say. Cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
All that to say, it may be a moment before we see any work towards a documentary coming from me, but I was inspired by your film to do that. So, you know what? It probably will come from me at some point.
Good. And that makes me so happy.
And that just rocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your relationship with watching movies? Do you watch a lot of movies? Are you a big movie guy? Or are you just kind of a casual movies type of guy?
Well, let's see.
Do you have a type?
You know, I have to say, I would say that I'm a big movies guy, except that I feel like television has taken me over. And I often say I miss the days when TV sucked. You know, it was like, now it's like everything is so good. It's just like, sometimes it's annoying. Yeah. I'm like, why does it have to be so good? Or there's so many, so I feel like I watch a lot less movies now because I get sucked into TV shows.
And that shit'll get your ass. You'll be stuck for days, hours,
weeks. Seriously. Actually, I've recently thought to myself, like, let's actually flip it around and just watch movies and don't watch, because also it's nice to not, like, movies are great. You don't have to commit to them for like, oh shit, this show is like 5 seasons and whatever, it's like sometimes, that's just feels like such like, do I really want to do this? Do I want to open this can of worms? But so I have been thinking, like, I'd love to kind of switch back to watching more films. And and that's what's great about your site too, is like it's this constant like resource of like even just short films, even if you got like the short film of the day. It's such an awesome idea. And I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So but
I made that switch years ago. I think during COVID, because early COVID, I mean, we're locked in our homes. All we can do is look at the TV all day, basically, you know?
Yeah,
and I was getting trapped in TV shows and
Right.
not even good ones. Like, I passed through the good ones and now I'm watching Emily in Paris or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, I actively hate this show, but for whatever
Right.
reason,
You're like, wait.
I'm continue watching on Netflix. Yes, please. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I'm like, meanwhile, the list of movies I've been wanting to see is like thousands deep, you know, and I'm making no progress on it. So I had to make the active decision to stop watching TV shows cold turkey and switch to only movies. And I kind of,
That's so
I also
cool.
had to change like how I think about watching movies because, I mean, there are some movies where you really have to lock in, sit down, top to bottom. There's not another way to watch them. But there's a lot more movies where you can casually watch them, or you can put on half a movie or watch 20 minutes of a movie at a time until you're done with it, the same as you would a TV show. Like, what, you know, if you're
Right.
watching a 30-minute TV show while you have dinner or whatever, you can watch 30 minutes of a movie and pause it and then pick it up later.
Exactly.
But I wasn't
Exactly.
thinking of movies that way at that time. I was thinking of them as more of a whole like thing where you sit down and it's like a whole business about it. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think once I changed the way my mind was framing viewing movies, that was kind of huge for me. Like that sounds so simple and kind of dumb, but it's true.
No, it is true. But I you know, sometimes you get into something and you're like, well, I can just pick this up tomorrow and stop it here. This
Yeah.
is a good point. But personally, I prefer to just do the whole
Yeah.
thing, you know?
I mean, if you can, it works.
if I
But
can.
like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I just,
But
yeah.
it works too to be able to do that. But also just thinking about it for a second, I feel like my go-tos for movies, because I'm also a musician and a huge music nerd. I love watching, well, just documentaries in general, but I love music documentaries. And I think that that's going to be definitely like, you know, my sort of like path in filmmaking is music documentaries. But I just also love documentaries about cults for some reason.
Some would say the two have some things in common.
Right. I never thought of that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just love, I seem to be drawn to documentaries.
Cool.
But I wonder why. I don't know. Yeah. There's so many great music documentaries out there now. And I'm always drawn to like, just all kinds of weird, interesting ones, kind of like the movie I made, you know, like ones about the Cleveland punk scene or the Minneapolis punk scene or, you know.
And you're already working on another music-related documentary, true?
2, actually.
2 of them?
Yeah.
One about your rocker grandpa.
Right. My great-grandpa and his 2 brothers came over from Italy in the 1930s to Cleveland, Ohio, and they had a big band. And they actually had a few famous singers for their band. That was sort of their sort of jumping off point to stardom, like Perry Como, who was like a Frank Sinatra type guy, and a singer named Frankie Lane, who made tons of albums, and a movie star actually named Fifi Dorsey, who was she was in about 20 films in between like the late 20s to the early 40s. And so she was a singer and an actress, and she sang for my great grandfather's band, and they toured in a school bus during the Depression.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it
DIY
is like,
baby.
I gotta make a movie about this. All the way back to the 30s.
Do your parents do music as well?
No,
Nothing at all.
And when
Wow.
not at all. And when I found out, I didn't find out about this band until I was about 21, and I was like, "What?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, why didn't anybody tell me?" You know, like my whole life, since I was like 7, I was like, you know, obsessed with Kiss and AC/DC and Alice Cooper and like, you know, so it was like, oh, okay.
Are your parents like into music, or how did you find your relationship?
Totally
with They're into
music.
it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they would blast music. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when I was a little kid, I would like sit in front of the speakers and, you know, look at the albums
yeah.
and read everything, you
Yeah.
know. So I definitely got an education from them and was inspired from them for sure. But they weren't like artistic people, really.
I find it fascinating. So I'm also sort of a musician. I'm a singer more than anything.
I know you are.
But both my parents also sang. They didn't really ever do anything with it. I think my mom was in choir in high school or whatever, but like they never were like in bands as far as I know, but they both had like gorgeous singing voices. And I just am interested in like the like lineage or something, like how it comes down from your family. Like, is music something that runs in the family? I think that's interesting. My dad for sure had like a really intense relationship with music and was a huge rocker and was always going to concerts, taking me with him. He was a DJ for a while. He owned a CD store, was really into music, and that's for sure where a lot of like my music education came from as well.
That's awesome.
Even just having access to like when he owned a CD store that I could just go in the store and like grab any CD and listen to it, was huge. Yeah. So usually I find from that, I do find that like my music knowledge or taste is usually more aligned with people like 10 years older than me than people my own age, just because I had so much access at such a young age. Like my first favorite album when I was 6 years old was Madonna Bedtime Stories. Like that is just probably not even an appropriate album for a 6-year-old to be listening to, but
I was just thinking that.
It's all about having sex and fucking. But
that's what
I heard Secret on the radio, and I said, that's the business. I thought I was going to become Madonna when I grew up. But anyway, I find that interesting. Madonna, that's why I was asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That's so cool that your dad, like, that you had access to all, all of that music. Like, what a dream for me, like thinking about that as a kid, or, that would be the coolest.
It was the coolest.
I hung out in record stores. Like there was a record store in my little town in Louisiana when I was growing up, and I would go after school. I would some kids would like go to the arcade or go to the pizza place. I would go to the record store, and the people that worked there were always like, "Oh, it's that little kid, hanging out." And and they actually ended up taking me to my first punk show when I was 14 years old. Yeah. And also took me to see Cyndi Lauper when she made the She's So Unusual album, her first album. And so I was like in love with Cyndi Lauper, and they thought it was really funny and cute. So they were like, they asked my parents if they could take me. They were a couple, if they could take me to Cyndi Lauper. And so, I mean, I was like, I'm hanging out with the cool older people from the record store. Yeah. They're taking me to, So imagining like my dad having like a record store or something, like, God, that would have been incredible.
Yeah, he was, taking me to concerts all the time. Yeah, even my parents were divorced. So when I was with my dad on our visitation or whatever, I was basically just stuck at the shop. So I would just have like hours and hours to sift through CDs and tapes and stuff and pick out. I'd listen to stuff just because I thought like the cover was cool or like the band name was funny or like whatever, and found so much music that way. It's crazy.
Exactly.
And I could basically just have almost anything I wanted. So I also got a pretty huge CD collection from that, although most of it now is no longer with me.
Right.
But
CDs are great now because I have a CD player in my car, and they're like $1 at the thrift store. So you could be like, oh shit, there's Madonna Immaculate Collection. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, so let's get into the movie we picked for today.
Oh my God, what a crazy movie. Whew.
Okay, so we watched the 2017 film November, or November. This is an Estonian film, and I'm not sure I'd ever watched an Estonian film before. I'm not sure I even truly bimbo mode. Not sure I even knew Estonia was a country. But here we are.
Yes. Well, you learn something.
You learn something new every day. That's what they say.
Yeah.
You picked this off of my list. So what made you pick this film?
Wow. Well, I love like fantasy and fairy tales, and I love it looked dark, and it looked surreal, and just the picture drew me in. And then when I read about that it was Estonian, I was even more interested because I have a couple of friends from Estonia.
Really?
And I'd say it was about 20 years ago. One of them is a poet, and her and I collaborated a bunch, and we did recordings together where I would play like sort of ambient music and she would read her poetry.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we actually made some videos. We made like a video to one of the poems that she did. She made an album of her. She has this really like, her voice reminds me sort of like Bjork or something. She has this like, her accent is really beautiful, and her voice is beautiful, and her poems are beautiful. And then she would get different musicians to do ambient music, and she made an album.
Was she reading them like in Estonian or in English?
In English, in English.
So she just had her accent.
But yeah, right. But so her and I performed in New York at the Estonian Cultural Center.
What I learned is they speak the language Estonian in Estonia, even though it used to be part of Russia. They don't speak Russian. And Estonian is actually closer to Finnish language and not related to Russian at all.
Right. Well,
thank you, Wikipedia.
You know a lot. Yeah. Yeah. No, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
I find that really interesting. But yeah, so I met her. We performed together a couple times in New York, and we performed in Paris in a cafe once, which was amazing. And then her and her good friend stayed with us for a few weeks in New York. So yeah, just a very creative relationship with her. So I thought, how cool, like an Estonian film like you. I'm not sure if I've ever seen one. So that's kind of why I chose that one, and it definitely delivered.
Hell yeah.
It was.
I had actually owned this on DVD for like 3 years, and I've never watched it. I just had it all this time and not watched it.
I've got a couple of DVDs like that as well.
I a few years ago won a contest from Oscilloscope that I won like a $500 gift card to Oscilloscope, and so I just got like 30 DVDs from them, or Blu-rays or whatever, and that's like a lot of movies. I had added all the movies from Oscilloscope that I had wanted, all the movies that I had heard of, and then still had like more money to spend. You kind of don't realize how much money $500 is in DVDs.
Right.
So I just started being like, well, what sounds cool? I don't know, like never heard any of this crap. And I was just reading little synopses or looking at covers or whatever and adding to cart. So this DVD I got through that process, and I've never checked it out, but it's been on my list. So I'm happy to finally have watched it.
I can't wait to hear what you think.
Okay, before we get into what we think, let me run through. There's not really like a cast and crew to know because everyone's Estonian, so they've mainly just done Estonian films, except so this is directed by Rainer Sarnet, who has done a couple other movies, but nothing I've ever seen. The one person who's in this movie that people seem to know is Dieter Laser, who is German, and he was famous for being in the Human Centipede movies. Oh my gosh. He plays the Baron in this film. And this was actually his last.
So creepy.
Yeah, he was really creepy. This was actually his last movie. He died in February of 2020, so he never got to know COVID. Bless his heart. Yeah, so this was his last film. This was actually two people's last film.
Wow, interesting.
Another actor, Arvo Kukumagi.
Oh, I love Arvo Kukumagi.
I'm not sure who he plays. I have kind of face blindness, so I had a hard time picking him out as a grizzled old man amongst many grizzled old men.
Many.
His character name is Rain in the movie, but I don't know that he's ever named.
I don't remember that. I do remember many grizzled old men and women with not many teeth.
Yes.
It was a wow, what a cast.
We'll get into the cast for sure.
Yeah.
As we go through the movie at least. But this was also, just to say, Arvo's final film. He died in May of 2017. So just crazy that this was end of life for so many actors. And one note is that this did win Best Cinematography in an International Narrative Feature at 2017 Tribeca, which I was just at 2024 Tribeca. Oh. So I don't know. I thought that was a fun connection. Cinematographer Mart Taniel, who's also not done anything else I've ever heard of. Sorry. But his work was stunning.
Incredible.
Stunning in the movie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to me, that's one of the main things is just, every shot is like, like something
Take
else.
My breath
like
away
really,
vibes.
Yeah, very, very beautiful.
So
and so stark and dramatic and beautiful and just wonderful work.
Hell yeah. So
Yeah.
critics scores on this movie, we have 96% on Rotten Tomatoes and 81% of Google users giving the thumbs up. So that's pretty good reviews. I will have you read a plot summary if you don't mind. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay. In a poor Estonian village, a group of peasants use magic and folk remedies to survive the winter, and a young woman tries to get a man to love her.
There you go. All right, so we can bust this baby open. The opening of this film instantly grabbed my attention. I mean, I thought it was just the perfect way to open this film. So what happens at the very beginning is that we get like a type of machine or something that's like animate. It looks like a skull on like three appendages that are made out of metal and knives and whatever.
Very just sort of like
very steampunk.
Yes, very crude and like
yes.
and like nothing I've ever seen really. Just like I would have me too. I was grabbed immediately when I saw that. I was like, the hell.
And so we're seeing that, and then what this thing does is grab a cow on a chain and then copter off into into the air with this cow and take it, some other place to a farmer. Watching this cow fly through the air was awesome. He brings this cow to a farmer, pins him to a wall, shoots ink on his face, and begs for more work. And the farmer tells him to make a ladder out of bread, at which point the machine gets so confused it basically just explodes. So that is like our introduction to the film. It has such a distinct look. It's in black and white and just instantly like disarming any expectation you could have going into it, knowing that it's just like a folk movie about Estonians in some old time. I think adding that like instant magical element was like so incredible. Immediately
pulled me in and was just, I just was like, all right, what are we in for here? It just gets way deeper. And from there.
Yeah. So this movie is based on a novel called Rehepap. I don't know if that's how you say it. It's Estonian. Rehepap means the old Barney, by Andrus Kivirak. Good grief with trying to pronounce these words. I don't know. But it's an Estonian novel of folk tales, and this movie is based on that and pretty closely based, it seems. One of the things in that novel that's in the movie is this type of machine, which we find out way later in the movie is called a krat. And what a krat is a creature created from household items or old tools or hay by its master, who then has to give a devil 3 drops of blood to put a spirit in it, at which point it becomes like a type of slave sort of to the master, and just has to do everything the master says. They were mostly notable for stealing and bringing various things to the owner. In the novel and in their folklore, Estonian folklore, these machines were often able to fly around, but it was necessary and crucial for them to keep working, otherwise they would become dangerous to the owner. So at the point that they become dangerous, this is when the owner asks the creature to do something impossible, such as build a ladder from bread, which they do in this movie, and they also do in the novel. They assign it a task that would take so long or be completely impossible to do that it caused the krat to catch fire and burn to bits, and thus got rid of them so that it didn't kill its owner. This movie does basically nothing to explain that to us.
I'm learning stuff here. I'm learning.
Especially at the beginning. They're not explaining anything. They're just like, here you are, you've arrived.
I know. I had to go back this morning and read about it too. I was like, okay, what was going on here?
They're all show don't tell, which I respect, but then I did have to do my own research, of course. And there are so many little bits of stuff like that in this movie. Like the krat is just one thing, but there are so many different little bits of like their folklore or pieces of magic or whatever that are in this movie and not really explained. But I think it's really fun.
You thought it was a fun movie?
I think it's a fun movie, but I also think it's really fun just to like insert you into this thing.
Yes.
And not be like, oh, this is my krat. By the way, a krat is a, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
They don't even say it's a krat at the beginning. You just go, well, I guess this is a world that has these freaky little machines. Like you don't you
Yeah.
don't even know like what it is until like, 40 minutes into the film when they're talking about another crat.
And there are things that do get revealed and explained as it goes on how like a soul is inserted into the crat. Things like that do become apparent, but definitely they just throw you right in.
They throw you right in. And I think that's so fun. They're not trying to dumb it down for anyone.
No.
I think also apparently similarly to the book, this movie, like, it does have a plot, like there is a storyline, but I feel like the story is almost like kind of not important. Like it's more about these like little scenes, these little episodes, these little characters, and like their tiny little things that they're doing are these funky little bits that are really like the heart of this movie. Like that's really kind of more important and interesting than sort of the overall story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There is a main sort of, overarching story to it, but each scene is so capsulized in its own sort of like, it's almost like, that's true. I didn't really think of that. Yes. I mean, I agree completely.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to say about it. I'm going to keep letting you talk because you're better at it.
Okay.
That's kind of how I feel about this film too. It's like I almost like it's hard for me to even express. Like I'm still processing it because I saw it last night. Yeah,
there is a lot to process, and it is you know much different than any film. Much different than most films I've seen, except for one film which I found a lot of comparison to. But I'll get into that in a minute.
Oh, I want to know what film that is because I actually thought of a film that while it's very different, there's a lot. Yeah, it reminded me of another film as well. And especially with these little scenes that you're talking about that are almost like their own micro movies, This other film is like that as well. But anyways, also in the beginning of the film, really blown away by, when they talked about, it's All Souls Day. Mm-hmm. It's like the Day of the Dead. And, we have to go out and see, the dead. And it's like, here's these people walking like, they're actually, they are the dead.
Yeah.
Like, and again, another thing, like this is the world of this movie. And it's like, they don't, you just accept it.
You're just like sort of surmising and accepting what you're seeing and coming to your own conclusions about what it is versus them saying really anything about what's going on. Yeah, that continues to be true throughout the movie. We'll get all these little pieces of different things of their culture or their beliefs or their rituals or whatever that we just have to come to our own conclusions on. And I think that's so fun. It's so playful. So before we get too much deeper in the story, I want to talk about sort of the look and the setting of this film because it's so important to everything about this movie. So we are set in a pagan Estonian village, probably somewhere in the 1800s, but they don't really say when. That's just kind of based on facts that they had like Germanic nobles in the area and that they were still allowed to be openly pagan kind of puts it in the 1800s somewhere. But it's very like no electricity in the woods type of movie. It's shot in entirely black and white and infrared on all types of different cameras. So they used film, they used digital, they used infrared a lot, which is really fun because I guess infrared cameras turn green to white. So they shot a lot of summer for winter because this takes place obviously in November. It's winter. They need a lot of snow going on. And to make that easier, they just shot in summer when everything was green with infrared cameras so they could simulate the look of snow. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. I had no idea. That is, wow. Very cool. Very imaginative. And I mean, there's some of the shots in black and white that are so intensely like there's a shot of this wolf running at the beginning of the film and it's almost like blown out like white. You know, I bet that could have been, one of those scenes shot in summer. It's like, it's so white. Yeah. It's just like the very first shot of the whole film, the screen is just totally white and then it fades to it's very intense for sure.
It's very intense. It's very stark. They've mentioned also another shot where I think it's one of the times when the girl is having a relationship with the wolf that they pan up and show like a shot of the moon. That was actually the sun. And they shot it with the infrared and then did some stuff in post that they're like, it looks exactly like you're looking at the moon. So it's like
So cool.
pretty crazy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. They mentioned being visually referring to Dead Man, the Jim Jarmusch movie, and the M.C. Escher painting called Three Worlds, which is just like a tree with black and white leaves kind of looking down into water where there's more of a scene happening. Because, yeah, the cinematography and the portraiture of this movie is just so gorgeous. I mean, it can't be overstated how gorgeous it is. They get such like intense and beautiful like depth and contrast, even though it's in black and white. Like almost any frame of this movie could be a photograph. Like it's just beautiful.
Exactly. It is nonstop. Like even if you don't like the movie or what it's about, just visually, it's so stunning.
Absolutely
nonstop through
stunning.
the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was just so cool. Like how stark it is. I don't know. Like it's way different than any black and white movie I think I've seen as far as its visual capabilities and its visual depth. Very cool. So as we start to get into the story, this is where I'll talk about the movie that I thought this movie brought up for me a lot. And they are, to be clear, not the same at all. Very different films, but there are similarities to be drawn. And that is the movie Hard to Be a God. Have you seen this movie?
No.
I did this movie for the podcast, I don't know, a couple of years ago.
I'm going to have to listen.
It's a Russian film, and it's from like 2013, I think. And the area of Russia where the director, Alexei German, is from, St. Petersburg, Russia, is quite close to Estonia. So they're just like right across the river, a couple hours drive away from each other, which I thought was fascinating based on how similar their movies are at sometimes. So Hard to Be a God is also in black and white, and it has a lot of the same like grittiness and like nastiness that this film has, especially when the opening was that like machine spitting whatever it is, oil, or I'm not sure what he spits onto that farmer's face. I mean, if you look at the poster for Hard to Be a God, there is just a guy covered in that oil and goo. Like everyone in Hard to Be a God is like, I think I've said, I'm on record as saying, it's one of the wettest movies I've ever seen. Like, it's just like juicy. Like, there's always someone covered in a juice. They're walking through a juice. Like, there's all kinds of liquids involved. It's just kind of like nasty and violent. And Hard to Be a God is set, I think, in the future, like on a different planet, but their future is sort of like our like barbarian era or something. So it's like it still is sort of like peasant village type vibes.
Yeah.
And also their plot is also sort of irrelevant to whatever's happening in the movie as well. Yeah, so I just was drawing a lot of similarities between the two. Like one of the first things happening once we start getting the movie going is like this girl violently plucking a chicken, and just all of this kind of was reminding me of Hard to Be a God. Although I didn't ultimately like Hard to Be a God. I think it's a movie you can watch like an hour of and be like, I've seen what I need to see. I don't think you need to watch the whole thing. It's 3 hours long.
Interesting.
But just there seemed to be a lot of comparisons between the two for me. And I thought that was quite fascinating, especially from how close of places they were made in. But I didn't see Hard to Be a God referenced in any of the like interviews I was reading with the filmmakers as like any sort of inspiration or anything like that. So kind of fascinating for me. What was the movie that you were picking up?
It made me think a little bit in terms of that it was shot in black and white, the sort of the starkness and the harshness, but also the intense beauty. This film called The Turin Horse.
I don't know this.
Have you heard of it? Oh gosh, you got to check it out. I think it's Romanian, and it is also like 3 hours, maybe longer. Maybe 4 hours.
How do you spell
it's
this?
Like Turin, Turin.
Oh, okay.
The Turin Horse. Check out the preview, the trailer for it. It's
a Bellatar flick.
Oh my God. It's basically just the everyday life of this family. They're very, very poor. Maybe the time period is around the same time. And it just is all of the little things they do, like her going to the well, like to get water, and it's freezing cold, and bringing the water back, and then having to make food for her father. And it's just her boiling the potatoes. It's like all like, you know, these simple things that and they have to take these horses to town and back to get what they need. And I don't know, it's not an easy movie.
Yeah.
But but it is stunning, and has these micro scenes that are like, like their own little movies. It's so interesting. Yeah. So that it made me think of that film.
Hell yeah.
A little bit. But it's way more, this is more of a sort of a fairy tale, and I love just all the Estonian folk magic, and
yeah.
I mean, it made me want to I'd like to read the book. I think it might
apparently
be,
it's a bestseller.
Yeah,
in the last 20
years. I wonder
years.
if I can find it in English.
I'm not sure if it's been translated or not.
Yeah,
I found a lot of I want to say criticism, but that seems like the wrong word, or analysis maybe is the better word. Found a lot of analysis of it in English, but I'm not sure if the analysis, some of them that I read did include paragraphs or excerpts translated to English, but I'm not sure if the entire work has been translated to English or not. But yeah, it probably is pretty cool. It sounds like part of the stuff that I read, it was very beautifully written, but I don't know if the whole book is done that way or not.
And it's a love story.
And it's ultimately sort of a love story. An unrequited love story. Yeah.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
It's so well.
The one other thing on the look and stuff that I want to bring up before we really start getting into it is the folks, the town folks, which you kind of briefly mentioned, but just the way the people look in this film. That was another thing I found similar to Hard to Be a God, because they also used very real, gritty ass looking people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They probably just went out into the woods and looked for some very old.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, they were real. It was very real.
I know in the casting for Hard to Be a God, they talked about casting outside of a busy subway station. So they just hung outside of the subway station and just picked people who look fucked up.
Ew.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're want to be in a movie? And a lot of the people for this film as well, most of them were non-actors. Only the core main cast were actual actors. And I don't know what their mode was of casting. When I read a question where the director was asked about it, and all he said was oh, I don't know, I just got headshots from my casting director and picked which ones I liked. So it's okay, well, where do those come from though?
Yeah.
So they did talk about the lady who plays the witch lives a similar life to the witch in the witch character. She lives alone in the woods. She's never been on a film set. She just kind of is a weird old lady living in the woods by herself, So
that's what made it so great.
Yeah.
These really very authentic looking and feeling characters that are just sort of
grizzled.
Yeah, spooky. Grizzled. I love that
grizzled,
word.
Spooky, missing teeth, kind of haunting.
Yes, very haunting.
Yeah.
Just to look at and to photograph. So yeah, perfect for this film.
Yeah, and a lot of the visual inspiration for the characters also came from a specific source, a photographer, Johannes Pasuke, who took pictures of Estonian peasants in the 19th century. On the DVD bonus features, there's also a short film made by this guy called Journey Through Satoma, which is considered Estonia's first ethnographic film, sort of like an anthropological documentary style film, just kind of filming this little town of having a celebration and all the people in it. It's really fascinating to watch, and you do see a lot of that realness and where the director was coming from with his ideas on their looks. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have the DVD?
I do. I mean, I used it to
awesome.
watch.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that movie may also be on YouTube or something, that little short.
Oh, cool.
It's a silent film. It's from 1913 or something like this. So
wow.
Yeah, it's old.
I definitely want to see that. Want to see that.
It's cool. And it's only 7 minutes or something, but it's cool.
Cool.
All right. So an hour in, let's finally crack this story. Our first entry of their day is All Souls Day, which is November 2nd, which you kind of mentioned a minute ago. This seems like the day that souls who are dead come back to eat their food, visit their family, visit the sauna, bathe maybe, and then be on their merry way.
Right. Get a bite to eat.
Yeah.
They were like hungry. I was like, what? They're hungry. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in Casper.
So that
Remember
stuff is so
Casper? They were
interesting.
eating, but like it just went straight through.
Right. No, they seem to stay inside, you know,
Yeah.
and they seemed hungry.
The way they look when they
So
enter,
cool.
like everybody's out in the woods and these souls just sort of like march in 2 by 2 or whatever in black and white. And these souls are like stark white and everything else around them is so dark. Oh my God. It's gorgeous as all hell.
I loved it. I loved their outfits, their costumes, and their hats.
Yes.
These weird, like triangle hats and big cone
Yes.
things, and just so the starkness of exactly the blackness of the forest, and like they're so white. It was really cool.
Looked awesome.
I love that scene.
Yeah. So a couple of the dead ghosts come back to the house of the main characters. Lena is the girl that's our main girl.
She's the main Yep.
And Hans is our main boy, and I don't know anyone else's name.
Right.
So a couple of these dead ghosts come back to Lena's house, and they are looking for his old treasures. Like, I think it's her grandpa wants some of his old treasures, a ring and a little brooch that he had. The ring is gone, and the girl, of course, lies about it and says it must have been a krat. And that's the first time we get the word krat in the movie. But she had traded it off for a nice fabric earlier. And her mom is also dead, but doesn't come in the house. And she brings her mom a loaf of bread. And again, the bread is so black and the mom is so white. It just looks crazy. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
But mom just talks for a second, disappears as well. The next most gorgeous part that I was in love with was when 2 of the townspeople catch 2 of the dead guys on their way walking to the sauna. Do you remember this scene?
Mm-hmm.
They're basically asking for hints on like where they can find some buried treasure in order to be able to get food. Everyone in this town is so poor. They're like, we eat tree bark and like bat shit, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Because we're so poor and hungry. These 2 townspeople just look awesome. Like we said, they're gritty, they're grizzled. The woman says they want to go pick flowers to make a wreath, and the ghost is like, where will you pick flowers in November, you old hag? And then they like whip each of these townspeople across the face with a broom. Oh my God, it just looks awesome. The camera work in this part, the blocking is like incredible. It just looks so cool.
There's so many weird little moments like that are just...
That's all this movie is weird little moments, basically.
Yeah.
I love it. And then the 2 ghosts go into a sauna and become chickens.
I was hoping you'd bring that up. I'm like, wait a second, run that by me again. Wait. And then they show them like as chickens in the sauna. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Yeah.
And again, no explanation to that. That's just kind of what happens.
I still I don't think we ever really got an explanation on that. Some of the things are kind of explained, but that was, unless you picked up something I didn't.
The only thing was that earlier Lena's dad had mentioned like that one time his grandma walked in on the sauna when 2 of the spirits were in there and they were giant chickens. They were people-sized chickens. Yeah. And that's the only other mention we get of it, but it never really says why. But that's why her dad refers to these dead people as beasts instead of as people.
Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, my grandma saw them as big ass chickens, so I think they're not exactly people. They're just like, they're like some secret third thing.
If I was listening to this podcast about this movie, I'd be like, I'm definitely this is like so weird. It's
weird. Wild.
Yeah.
Next coolest scene is when the townsfolk all line up to get their Body of Christ wafer at church.
I found this part really interesting.
Yeah. I love it, if for no other reason, because we get to see each character like individually, like sort of portraited or whatever.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
They're walking
Absolutely.
up one at a time and like opening their mouth. So you're like specifically getting like a full vision of their mouth. Like their teeth are missing. They're like black. They're gross. They're dirty. And just getting one at a time, like these incredible looking characters walking up and opening mouth for a wafer.
Amazing shots. Yeah. That was a great shot and really interesting, I thought, too, because they're all all such pagan people, but here's this influence from the church, like, you know, and they're all coming to get their communion wafer. But then do we say, can we say, or do we not say what then they all spit it out and into this one guy's collecting them. And then they, so I was like, are they rejecting the church? But then they say something about that they're making, was it a bullet? Or like
they use the wafers to make bullets because no beast can resist the power of Jesus Christ or something like that.
Yes. Thank you. I'm so glad you remembered. I knew there was something else weird connected to it. Wow. Stuff like that. Just so much good, weird stuff.
So it's like this baron and baroness are trying to convert these townspeople to Christianity, but the townspeople are so pagan and so like in the midst of their folklore that they are still like making things magical that sort of weren't the intended result. Because there is sort of magic involved in Christianity as well. Like, they don't want to talk about it, but like, eating the bread because it's the body of Christ or whatever, that's magical. And these people are not educated. Like, they don't understand everything. So, they twisted that to be like...
Totally. That's so cool. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah.
So, we see a man go to buy a soul for his crat from the devil. When he walks into the woods to find this devil, it's lightning, and the way the lightning looks, oh my god, it was so cool. The lightning in this black and white woods, I mean, can't be overstated how gorgeous this movie is, and all I want to do is just be like, this scene was gorgeous, this next scene also gorgeous. But
that is
simply facts.
That is the movie. Yeah. That's the movie, right? It's like that's the number one thing. It's just
how gorgeous it is.
Yeah, the nonstop feast for your eyes of like, oh my god. Oh. Even if it's you know very like gross or harsh or whatever, it's still just done beautifully. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to give 3 dots of blood into the devil's book and exchange your soul for whatever soul he gives you for the crat. But this specific man is a little trickster, and he uses black currant berries instead of blood to cheat the devil and save his soul from going to hell. This comes back into play later when the devil realizes he's been fooled and won't let it happen again. In this scene also, the devil has like a black goo that he rubs on both their faces. Also, something I noted was the editing style in this movie. There's a lot of cuts. There's a lot of quick cuts. It's cutting back to something, forward to something, across to something. Somebody's walking, and then you see a cut to some drapes that are blowing in the wind, cut to a wolf, cut to, whatever, which normally I may not always like, but I think it really does help to maintain like visual interest when a lot of what you're looking at in this world is just kind of woods, and it's cutting to like gorgeous shot after gorgeous shot over and over. The director wrote that he wrote the script like a visual poetry, and he wanted the story to be told in pictures, and so he didn't want like these long shots. He wanted like short metaphorical shots, like photographs, going back to him being inspired by that photographer.
Definitely. And I feel like each little cut really lent to like the overall like mood of what was happening too, or like, it was really an interesting style. And it's almost like you don't even realize it, like, if like you said, it feels like you maybe would normally, like it could get distracting or whatever, but it's like, because you're so taken in by every shot, it's like, it somehow just works and flows. Yeah.
I agree. And that was really cool.
Definitely.
So the Baroness, the German baron's daughter, has a lot of the townspeople working for this family, and one of them steals her underwear, citing that if it is on Estonian soil, it belongs to Estonians. And so,
there you go.
You know what? That tracks. Makes sense to me. And so he's trying to sell this underwear to the townspeople. Okay, sex work is work. And Hans, our main boy of the story, says, well, if everything that's on Estonian soil belongs to Estonians, then this girl's bedroom also belongs to Estonians, and therefore I have a right to be in it. And the guy's like, well, that tracks. Makes sense to me. So he ends up sneaking Hans into her bedroom, and we find Hans falling in love with this Baroness.
Oh, so deeply in love.
So deeply in love. Smitten with the girl. The only clean girl in town.
Yes. He's definitely like under a spell. That's the feeling I had.
He's got Boyoyoing's disease.
I've never heard of that disease till now, but absolutely, just like yeah, he is under a spell. And
yeah, and she's also under some sort of spell, because what we find out is that she goes sleepwalking on the roof basically every single night, looking gorgeous as all hell. Yeah, out there, angelic on the roof. It seems she does this every single night, goes sleepwalking on the roof, and every single night about throws herself off of it until someone at the last minute grabs her and goes, hey, wake up, you're jumping off the roof right now in your sleep. They don't decide to put up any kind of fencing or something. I found that to be interesting. But the first night that we see her do this is also the first hint we get at Lena being some type of werewolf. Mm-hmm. And actually the Baroness being some type of werewolf. So Lena awakes to a start, and then we see a connection between a wolf who's at the palace or whatever you want to call it, watching this woman be on the roof, and Lena. It cuts back and forth to their eyes or something. So it's she's seeing through the wolf, or has some kind of connection to the wolf or something. It's not really made clear if she is full on werewolf or just has this psychic
or just
connection,
psychic vision through the wolf. Yeah. It's almost she has what is it called? Shapeshifts. She shapeshifts maybe, but it's really interesting. And then what you said about the Baroness also. Yeah. That I caught that as well. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think the Baron is the one who catches her the first night, and he says something like, oh, it's just your sickness. It's a full moon. And we know what happens on the full moon.
So right. Exactly.
It's possible that she is also having a connection with some wolf we're not seeing, some wolf off screen somewhere, that she's seeing whatever that wolf's seeing somewhere. I don't know. Pretty interesting.
I love the character of Lena. She's so awesome. I mean, it makes you really think God, she's such a strong character, and just living at that time and being a woman and just being sold off by your dad and living in a place that, you can't even stand all the way up because the ceiling's so low. And I mean, just sleeping next to a cow. But she's she's such a strong character. And I love that her character is a wolf, or, she's a werewolf, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Living a life as a woman at this time, hard enough. Living a life as a werewoman. Can you imagine?
Yes. I mean, it gives her, a little bit of an advantage. But I mean, just such a great character.
It seems painful at times for her. We see her greasing herself up and writhing on the ground, and while also a wolf is writhing somewhere. So is that pain, or what is happening there?
Or she's, exactly. Those are great scenes as well.
Yeah. Everything looks so cool again.
Yeah.
It almost goes without saying.
Yeah.
Looks beautiful.
Yep.
But Lena is low-key crushing on Hans, who's in love with the Baroness. So Lena goes to see a witch while she's oiled up and asks the witch if she can make Hans forget the Baroness and love her instead. And the witch is like, well, you could kill her. She gives Lena an arrow to throw at her window and spill out her brains, but she can't do it because of her good nature, and she actually becomes the person saving the Baroness from falling off the roof the second night. So she's got sort of an unrequited love thing going on, and that is really what the ultimate plot of this movie is, ? It's the story of the love triangle, or whatever you want to call it, because none of them are in love with each other. They're all just one to one, the love line. But it kind of doesn't matter. I don't know. It could be there or not be there, and it doesn't really change the movie to me all that much, except at the ending. So the next chunk of movie that rocks is the plague section. We see a woman who I found out through reading, is a shapeshifter. We see a shape-shifting woman standing at the edge of a river, and there's like a guy on the other side, and she goes, if you help me cross this river, I'll pay you with a kiss. But when she does get across the river and does kiss him, he instantly turns black and drops dead. So an older villager finds him and goes, fuck, we got a plague on our hands. And so they have a town meeting where their first line of defense against this plague is putting their pants on their head, because then the plague will think they have two asses and won't dare touch them. So
of course,
there is so much comedy in this movie too, I should say. Like, it's kind of understated, but it is like also really funny.
I agree. I found myself laughing at a few parts of the movie. Yeah. Like even right at the beginning with the cow and the machine and the Krat was like turned into a helicopter and lifted the cow. I was like, I was laughing. But the music's like really scary and stuff. And it's like, there's something creepy to it, but it's, I throughout the whole thing, I found myself at moments laughing. Yeah. And this was definitely, the plague scene is definitely one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
Yeah. It's impossible, this movie, to nail down genre-wise, and every like article I was reading about it would be like, yeah, it's a comedy, drama, surrealist, fantasy, folk, horror, sci-fi. Like, they're just like listing like 15 genres, because like you can't really pick one.
I didn't actually find it to be a horror film at all. Yeah. Like I saw that that was
folk
one of the
horror,
first things.
If anything, but really not.
Folk, barely, folk horror.
Yeah,
sure. But yeah, I was ready to get more scared. And I was like, oh, it's not really scary. Yeah. But I mean, just looking into people's mouths and seeing like, they're black and, missing teeth is probably the scariest part.
It's more like gritty than anything. I think the cover or like the poster for the film also makes it look like it's going to be kind of scary or dark. And it's really, right. Yeah, it's really not scary. It's a love story, like we said, ultimately. It's just kind of a nasty one.
It's very nasty. Yeah.
I've been a nasty girl vibes.
Some nasty.
When they put all their pants on their heads and shoes on their hands, they all lay like next to each other in this barn, and a goat comes in and sniffs them all and leaves, and they're like, phew, that was close. That was the plague, was this goat. And they foiled the goat. After which they do like a cuddle puddle to celebrate.
That was so weird.
It was weird. It was awesome.
Oh my God. It was like, is it going to turn into like a big orgy? Yeah. Like the way they were all already laying, side by side together on the floor. And all of a sudden they're just, slowly like.
They're in like a sphere and they're writhing.
And the way it was shot, and they're writhing and it's like shot above them and it's all these bodies intertwined, and it's like, but then doesn't somebody come in and like kind of snap them out of it?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Like a village elder guy, it looks like kind of a sort of leadership type of guy, comes in and it's like, look, you guys are celebrating because you think we beat the plague, but we didn't beat it. Like, it's still out there somewhere. Right. We've just like thwarted it momentarily. So,
but what a way to celebrate. Just like, we're all gonna just sort of get into
naked
like an
and
orgy.
writhe like a bucket of worms.
So weird. It's so weird.
And it's like, it's like not sexual. It's weird. It's cool.
But
I wonder if
it feels like it's going that direction.
Yeah.
It feels like it, and it's just like starting, and it's like, and then it gets stopped.
I wonder if that's somehow connected to like some sort of folktale or something also that we're not keyed into. Not sure. It's interesting though.
Yeah, like it could be some kind of magic, or it could be like that was. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but definitely they don't let you know.
I'm thinking of like the scene in Midsummer where like all the girls are with Florence Pugh and they're like screaming together. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're like heaving and screaming together. Like it feels maybe that like adjacent to that. Like they're all writhing together, feeding off of each other's energy in this like sort of puddle.
Taken over by definitely. That's a really good example of
So I just wonder if it's something part of tied to their legends, or I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So the guy who comes in is like, this plague has probably morphed into something else. So we got to find what it has morphed into. So if you see anything weird in this neighborhood, bring it to me and we'll decide if the weird thing is the plague or not. So again, we get like another instance of like every townsperson lining up so we can get a shot of them one by one. And I ain't mad about it because I just love looking at these little freaks. And
definitely.
they all have like normal items though. He's like, okay, that's a button. Like, have you never seen a button?
I love
before?
that scene. I love that. I love that scene. And, and the one guy who had nothing.
Yeah. Because what
was that Hans?
No,
Hans had the button.
No.
Hans had the
because
button.
It was an older guy. He had nothing because he initially had like a coin, like some kind of silver coin, and he put it in his mouth to hide it. He didn't want to show everybody the coin.
Oh, right.
So that ends up being a man who dies. He dies next scene pretty quickly, right after they get through the line and don't find anything suspicious in the line. The guy dies and like the coin falls out of his mouth and a hog is in the room. And this hog is the new plague or whatever. And the hog sounds crazy. Like the way they've done his voice, it's for sure a person doing it. It just like the growling and screeching is like really intense.
That was one of the scariest parts of the movie for some reason. I had to turn it down a little because I was like, I found that to be the scariest part of the movie.
Hogs are scary. Like people don't talk
they
about.
They are. Yeah.
Y'all got hogs out there? You got wild hogs?
Oh yeah, we do. We have desert hogs. They're called javelinas.
Yeah.
And they're actually so ugly that they're so cute. They're like the cutest. And apparently they're not actually related to pigs, but although they look like wild boars or wild hogs, but they're technically like peccary.
Interesting.
So look them up. Javelina.
Are they scary like also?
Javelin. They can be scary because they grunt and they if they feel like they're like if they have a baby, which the babies are so cute, but like if they feel like threatened, they'll like and they'll like they can charge you and they have and they have these big tusks. They have these giant tusks, and they will fuck you up.
Yeah.
They will fuck you up. But I think they're so cute.
Oh yeah. Well, this is not a cute little piggy. It is a big nasty hog who screeches like a human.
Yeah.
And the town leader guy is like, please, can you just spare like one boy and one girl from our race so they can carry on our people? Please swear it on the Bible that you'll let these two live. And so the hog does like swear on the Bible with his little hog hand, which is so funny.
Oh my God. I love this movie.
But the boy and the girl that were pulled out are, of course, Hans and Lena, are two unrequited love couples or whatever. And Lena tries to hold Hans's hand like, oh, finally, like we've been fated to be together and like do and fuck, basically.
Right.
We've been fated to fuck. And Hans is like not having it and like violently pulls his hand away from hers. It's like, even if we're the last two people alive, like I wouldn't.
I know. You're just like, what's wrong with you, Hans?
Yeah. She's cute. She's cool. Come on.
All the things. Totally.
She's a babe. She's got it made. Come on.
Totally. She's like a babe, like a werewolf, babe.
But he's seen a clean woman and he's got Boy-Yoing's disease. So there's just simply nothing he can do about it.
He is locked in.
He's locked in, yes, on this clean woman. So, the people do like band together to kill the pig. And so it's kind of like a triumph for the town. But at the same time, it's like a devastating moment for Lena because she's just like, wow, even if I'm the last girl on earth, like he's not even interested in exploring, holding my hand for a damn moment. So I'm quite sad for her, but they do defeat the plague at that time. So that's basically the end of that scene. Then we see Hans go get a soul for his crat. And Hans tries to do the current trick again, where he doesn't use blood, but he uses the berries. But the devil is onto them. And so he basically proactively takes the blood from Hans, scrapes his neck and gets the blood out before Hans even has a chance to think about it.
Who, by the way, the devil is really scary.
The devil is awesome.
Yeah, the devil is really, really insane.
Going on record as saying the devil is awesome. He's badass as hell. Yeah. He looks wild. Like he's a crazy character. Like he's really flamboyant or like circus type of guy. I don't know.
Right. He almost reminded me of like a way darker, more fucked up Beetlejuice or something. Not like, hey, not funny like that, but like just
Yeah.
his hair. I don't know, just something about his look kind of had almost like a bloodier, creepier
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. Like,
There is
yeah,
something to that. I think that's a good
yeah,
comparison. And he is just kind of
yeah.
like a little freak. He's a
Exactly.
little freak who's kind of evil, who like lives in the woods, this part of the woods where I think there are no other things. They say it's a part of the
Yeah.
woods where the trails cross, and trails don't cross anywhere else because it's considered a bad omen or something. So this is like the one place where trails cross, and that's where the devil lives. So Hans is unable to trick the devil and does sign over his soul in exchange for this Krat spirit. But the Krat that he had built is just a snowman, a simple snowman. And the spirit that he gets put inside of it is much different than most Krat spirits that we've encountered.
Yes.
He's like a real like philosophical guy, a real lover. He has like a lot of cool
Yeah.
stories.
He's a snowman.
He's a snowman, but he's like
Yeah.
gentle
But he tells
and
all
cool.
he teaches he teaches Hans
He's a
like,
wise man.
you know, yeah, he's a wise, like sensitive Krat, and he teaches him, tells him all these worldly stories and things that he didn't know about, and he
Yeah.
learns from him, and he's a romantic. It's and he's a snowman.
And it's interesting, like the way the snowman Krat describes his being. Like he talks about sort of being like an ethereal presence or like sort of omnipotent or whatever. He's like, I live in the water, I live in the wind, I am sort of just like around, but I've never been able to speak until you made me into a Krat and now I have a mouth.
Right.
So
I love it.
because my understanding of the way the devil puts the spirits into these things is like it's a 1-for-1 exchange. Like Hans has given his spirit so that he can get a spirit to put in his Krat. So theoretically then Hans's spirit will later become a Krat, but maybe that's not how it works. Is kind of what I'm getting from listening to the snowman Krat talk about his experience of being. So it's a really fascinating part of the movie.
That is definitely fascinating, and yeah, I was wondering about that as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I even picked up on that Hans could become a Krat someday. Or
Well, it's sounding
because
like that's not how it works, but that was just like kind of what I was assuming is how it worked.
Right.
So Hans had created this Krat to, like we've said, the purpose of Krats is to get things for their owner. And so he created this Krat to get the Baroness for him to have, basically. But the snowman is like, sorry, you created me for nothing, because that's like one thing I can't do is like get people for you. And I also can't be inside because of my snowman nature. I'll melt. So instead, he just, becomes this sort of like philosophical truth teller and storyteller to Hans, and sort of teaches him the ways of love, or tells him about other experiences of love that he's had and stuff like that. It's quite nice, quite a gentle part of the film. And we instantly cut to some creep wanting to marry Lena, who is promised to be able to marry her by her dad. And he's just like this nasty, like, dude who's like 3 times her age. He's like big. He's like huffing. He just is kind of like a nasty, sweaty pervert dude. And her dad's like, basically, you can't escape him because I'm the dad and what I say goes.
Right.
And so he like almost rapes Lena. He like gets on top of her. There's a big struggle. And then he starts to sound exactly like the pig.
The pig.
Yeah.
And he actually, I hate to say it, but he actually kind of, like, his face kind of looks like a pig too. Like, that was so creepy and weird.
Creepy and weird, but also apt. Like, men are pigs. You know?
Yeah, it worked totally.
And the girl's a dog.
Perfect.
Okay, men are pigs, women are bitches, literally.
It works. It works.
So once he starts to sound like that evil pig, the dad does kick him off of her. So we kind of don't get any more resolution or story to it than that, but I'd like to think that the dad did save her from having to marry this pig man.
Yeah.
I don't know. We get another sort of rape scene pretty quickly also. There's like another just random man who's like in love with one of the Baroness's maids and wants to give her a love potion. So he comes to the witch to get a love potion for her, but she's like, all you need to do.
This is like a whole
Yeah.
This is a whole other weird side movie story.
Just another one of those little clips.
Yeah.
She's like, you make the love potion. It's just your sweat, your armpit hair, and your feces, and let her eat it. and then she'll be in love with you. So he bakes it into...
Sounds easy enough.
Easy as hell. Easy as pie. But he bakes it into like a loaf of bread and tries to feed it to her, and she's like, why does this smell like literally shit? Because I think it's literally shit, and she won't eat it.
I don't know why this part made me laugh really hard too.
Because
and
then
she hands it to the other guy, who I love that character, whoever that guy was, the guy with that, is just always setting up the tables and the plates and stuff, and he's very like, because it's shit.
Yeah. So she stabs him with a fork. She's like, I ain't eating this shit.
I think that's an appropriate response when somebody tries to feed you their shit.
Yeah.
Stab them with a fork.
Yeah.
That was a crazy scene too. Like, that lady, speaking of crazy, has the craziest teeth in the movie.
Dude, yes.
It's kind of like she's not missing any teeth, but they're all like shifted. So they're all like, oh.
And she has a huge mouth. So like right after this,
it's very accentuated.
he basically goes to rape her, and it goes like first person POV for a minute. And so you're just like through his eyes raping her, and she's like,
oh my God,
screams, but her mouth is so huge and crazy. And maybe it's, maybe it's edited to be that way. I don't know, but it looks insane. And her screams are wild.
I almost forgot about that part. Yeah.
That was kind of angst coded. Have you seen Angst? I believe that's also a German movie. It may be Polish. It's German. It has a Polish cinematographer. Anyway, that's me getting too deep. But that's like from 1983, a movie about a serial killer. But it has a lot of that crazy like camera work as well, and it's like really intense violence and rape. But
yeah, I can't handle this.
Yeah,
probably missed that one. Yeah,
that's all right. You don't have to watch it, but it is a really gorgeous movie. A really gorgeous fucked up movie.
Yeah,
but just to say that this part of this movie was reminiscent of
Made
that.
you think of that. Sure.
Yeah. But you see her mouth get all wild too.
Right.
Really crazy violence.
Weird effects. Yeah. Seems like they did some kind of weird effects to it.
Yeah.
Or like stretched her out or something like that. Like, yeah, in the edit. Yeah.
Looked freaky.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like here's just an aside, a little rape aside, and then we'll get back to the main story. So right after that, Lena steals her grandpa's brooch to go trade for a fancy Baroness dress. Basically, all these townspeople are just robbing the Baron and his family blind and selling off all their stuff to each other. It kind of rocks. But somebody had stolen one of the Baroness's dresses, and Lena goes to buy it off of her and wears it to meet Hans, in disguise, so that he wouldn't recognize who she is, because she's in this nice dress and she's got like a little lacy veil thing that you can't really see her face through.
Covering.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what were you going to say?
I was just going to say another favorite parts.
Yeah.
Favorite couple of parts coming up here.
Yeah. So she goes to meet him in sort of a little clearing where he has a snowman, and Hans is just like bewildered with her beauty, even though he can't really see her. I think it's just a clean thing. Like, he's attracted to clean werewolf girls. They have like a moment where they sit together in silence, and then they kiss through the veil. So she never does lift up the veil and reveal her face. And the snowman is like barely left. Like, he's almost completely a puddle at this time, but he does say like, that was real love. Like, I know that girl 100% is in love with you. And as he melts into nothingness, he leaves behind a ring that was from one of his stories of also true love for Hans to take.
It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful. And so a lot of this is the most action of the whole movie, is this last 5 minutes of this film, because a lot of things happen right then. So the boy takes the ring and is like, oh fuck, that girl really was in love with me. She had walked away already. So he gets on a horse and buggy, and he's like, I gotta find her. I'm taking this ring. This is gonna be my wife. Meanwhile, the Baroness, we cut to her, and she finally does walk right off of the roof, and that she's been teasing the whole film, and dies instantly. The girl, Lena, is down the road, and she hears the horse and buggy coming up, so she's getting really hopeful, oh, he's coming back for me. But in the 30 seconds it takes for him to horsey up to Lena, the devil hops onto his buggy.
Oh shit.
And is like, so what happened to your crat? And he goes, it melted. And he said, well, then it's time to pay, and just kills him. Twists his neck to death.
Snaps his neck.
Yeah.
Just he's dead.
Instantly dead.
Just what?
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Hans is dead.
Which seems unfair, but that's the game you play when you play with the devil.
No, I actually liked it. It was good. It was like, oh, the snowman's melted up. Pay
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
So he takes his spirit right then.
Oh.
And so Lena never does get to like requite her love. Basically, nobody ends up with love at the end of the movie. And when that buggy passes her, he's dead in the buggy.
And she's chasing after it.
Yeah.
And that scene was it was really beautiful also, and very, very sad and beautiful. And then maybe the most beautiful scene of the film.
She also deserves more, by the way.
Definitely.
Get you a man who can look at you the way he looks at the Baroness or something. Who can
Seriously,
get Boy Ewing's disease about you.
But I could see why she liked him, though, because there aren't very many options out there.
They're basically the only two people in that age range in the whole village, so it's kind of unfair.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we see another Krat cleaning the boy's body, preparing it for burial, which was just cool. It looked awesome. These Krats are practical, by the way. They're made like marionettes. So there's a lot of like string rigs like rigged up to the ceiling to help control these Krats. And I guess they had to be pretty intense because the Krats are made out of like steel plates. Like they're big things. Like they're full size. They're not like miniatures or anything. They're bigger than people, and they're made out of steel and metal and different things. So
like parts of tools and like wood, and this one almost looked like it had like a part of like an animal or skin or something on it. It had a weird face that almost looked like skin, which was, did you notice that?
Yeah, it was like old leather or something.
What is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it was, it could have been leather. Yeah. So
we see the Krat clean this boy's body. It just looks cool. There's not really much to that scene except that the Krat's being a little shit and has to clean his body. Then we have that gorgeous scene of the body like being thrown into water and what?
Wait, but I thought this was a really interesting part though, before getting into the. Oh, are you talking about when she walks into the water?
Well, just say what you're gonna say, and we'll see.
Oh, I was gonna say that in that scene that the father was that his father, Hans's father with the Krat that was preparing the body. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was upset, and he was like, and he like kicks the Krat, and it kind of falls apart, and he says something to the effect of like, how do you expect to take a soul and put it into something and not have to pay for it or something like that? Do you remember that? Yeah, I just thought that was really an interesting.
The Krat was razzing them for tricking the devil. Like, you think you can just get these souls for free when you're over there using currents to sign the book or whatever. Right, you're going to have to pay. You got to pay somehow, yeah. Yeah. And he paid. Hans paid. He had to pay with his soul. Yep. It's a shame he didn't get a Krat who could be more everlasting. Yeah. He had to do a snowman. He picked it wrong. Snowman. So yeah, after we leave that scene where his body's being cleaned by the Krat, we kind of cut to like his little funeral, and then they throw his body into water, which then like becomes a lake, and the girl jumps in the lake to like give him a farewell kiss basically. And it's just like, again, so gorgeous, like them just being underwater, the way it's lit, just beautiful. And just her walking into the water, it's so white and blown out and beautiful, and she's just with the dress on, the black dress entering the water. It's so incredibly beautiful. And then just falling through the water like in slow motion, and both of them being down there in the kiss. It's so beautiful. I was like really taken by it. But I think she going into the water to kill herself. She is like completely depressed and like listless, and even she goes in the water, she goes underwater quite deep, does this kiss, and her body does float back up, but even when it floats back up, you're kind of not sure she's even alive because of the way she's like kind of lost all emotion. She's kind of lost all care. She just sort of, the body floats because it's floating on its own, and she's not really doing anything to make it float, So when she gets kind of pulled out of the water, you're like, is she even still alive? But then she is like looking around and, moving. So when they're down there too, after they do the kiss, like all this treasure comes flying up from under the water, and they say that's the Rack treasure. Rack, I think, is where they are, like the city that they're in, town that they're in. And there are townspeople there just like trying to take all this treasure instantly. And then this girl floats up and they're like, maybe you can have one and we'll take the rest, pretty much.
They give her one. I took it as she deliberately walked into the water to kill herself, and under the water was his. I mean, he was there because they threw him in, right? And so then she kisses him, and that was like her last kiss, and then she dies. And when she comes up, it was like her last, like she says one line, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, me neither.
And then I thought she was just dead. Yeah. And they leave that one gold necklace on her, and she's just surrounded by coins, gold coins. And
they say the necklace, I remember that they said the necklace could be used as a, what's it called, for a virgin bride, when you pay the other family money. What's that called? When you like give the other family like cows or money or whatever when you get married. I'm
not sure what that's called.
Think of the word.
An offering? I don't know.
Anyway, people are screaming at home, but you know what I'm talking about. And they
Yeah.
They said she could use the gold for that, but you know, she doesn't see herself getting married because she wanted to marry Hans.
Right.
And Hans is dead. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it kind of, is she dead? Is she not? We don't really know. But spiritually, she feels dead because her heart is gone. And that's pretty much roll creds on the film.
Yeah.
So any other notes on this film? I do want to say, like, the main inspiration from the filmmaker that he cited was that the main motive in all these Estonian fairy tales is greed, and that all the activities and characters, everything they're doing is centered around greed and like trying to use the spiritual world for their own selfish benefit, like in many ways. And so every little piece of story that we see, they're stealing, they're, you know, thwarting the devil to get a free slave, like they're doing all this kind of stuff all out of selfishness and none of it out of like building community or taking care of each other, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's so true. There, throughout the whole film, there's a lot of greed. Yeah, just stealing from, you know, from the castle they work in, the Baroness, all the time.
They mention that the Baroness is sick. She's like so ill she can't get out of bed. And the girl's like, well, while she's in bed, I figured she doesn't need nightgowns, so I'll just take all her nightgowns.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, she didn't have nightgowns to the point where I had to loan her one of mine. And the other girl goes, isn't that just her nightgown that you stole? And she's like pissed off about it. She's like, no, it's mine.
Yeah, no, I mean, just living in those conditions. I mean, everybody's, you know, there's such survival mode all the time, and it's made everybody so greedy. And yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It's a brutal world.
For sure.
That they live in. Yeah.
Anything else that we didn't mention?
No, you hit all the parts that really stuck out to me.
Hell yeah.
No, yeah, you got it.
Hell yeah.
That was really fun. I'm so glad that I got to be introduced to that film.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to write to my friend and ask if she's heard it. I'm sure she knows the film.
It seemed to be a pretty big deal at the time that it came out. I mean, it won a lot of awards and stuff, so pretty cool. So what would we rate this movie out of 5?
You go first.
Me first? I'm going to say I teeter between a 4, 4.5. I want to say 4 solidly. It's the most gorgeous. Like, it's so gorgeous. So that gives it a lot of points. And I really just enjoyed my experience in the world. Like I said, there wasn't too much in terms of like overall plot, but I actually wasn't that mad about it because I just liked looking at it. I liked looking at it and seeing what everyone's up to and what freaky little business they're doing. I really liked that they didn't explain a whole lot. That they just kind of immersed you in and left you there to your own devices. I think that's really fun. And I really loved like how practical everything was and how tangible everything was, even with the magical elements, that it all felt really real. You know, I think that's really fun. So I'm going 4.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. I thought about it this morning and I was like, I knew it would be. I didn't even know if it was going to be how many stars or what, but I was like, if it's a 5-star, that's a 4-star movie right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to, you know, I reserve 5 for, you know, it wasn't 5, but man, it was just incredible to look at.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I loved the magic. I loved the folklore. It really made you really feel like what it would be like to live in that environment, in that world. It's so bleak, it's so cold, but just the survival of these people and how they lived. And I mean, every scene was like its own little movie and a mini movie. And I kind of have a soft spot for that sort of like, unrequited love, like, sad, like heartbreaker. And it delivered in a visually beautiful way as well, like in the absolute sad sort of outcome to the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thank you for turning me on to it. It was great. I really loved it.
Yeah, I do think the only time I really like felt something for the movie besides just being like, oh, this is so cool, like the only time I was caused to feel an emotion by the movie, I guess, was really that end part where like everything kind of falls apart last minute. So I think, yeah, that helped take away a part of that star for me.
Wait, it took away the star?
Just like we're saying it's 4 out of 5 and it's not a 5 out of 5. Like if I was more invested in specific people or in a story or made to feel more things by the movie other than thinking that it was gorgeous, then it probably would have bumped it up a little for me. Yeah. Right.
For sure. Definitely. And also I feel like because they were able to have that sort of emotional impact, at least for me at the very end with Hans and Lena, that helped it at a solid 4. It wasn't well, it was fucking weird. And I didn't know, like, it didn't kind of have any kind of, it gives you a sense of closure to a story. But yeah, had that not been there, that much, I think it would have been like all visual. And which is cool, but it's like, it's nice to have something else there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But had they even invested more, it could have gone farther.
Yeah.
In the emotion part. Yeah.
I
think that no, that's not true. I was going to say, like, my little experience with Estonian people is like that. It made me think about that as well. And they really have this great sense of humor, which is very like subtle, but they also are very stoic people, And so kind of just, I don't know, it just sort of made me think of like what it takes to survive there, like what it took to survive there and how they are the way they are, So yeah.
Although we have to hope that most Estonian people are not living this exact life.
No, not at all. No. But just their overall sort of like, Americans are so like, and they're just very carry themselves in a different way,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But they do have a really great sense of humor, like, for sure. It's just, it's a little more subtle.
And this movie full of dark humor, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I saw it. I like that about it too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now it's time for ScreenVomit. So in this part of the pod, we just talk about whatever else we've been watching lately. So any movies or shows or whatever. So what you been watching?
Well, I just saw Furiosa.
Nice. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, loved it.
You loved it?
I think it's my favorite of the whole series.
Really? I've been hearing a lot of people like really hyping it like that. Yeah.
It's really great. And yeah, I mean, I think Anya Joy, what's her name?
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Taylor-Joy, yeah. She has this way about her from seeing her in the Northman that she's a powerful actor that doesn't need to say a lot, like she
looks crazy.
She just gave a really powerful performance at times. And apparently my daughter told me that she was paid, I can't remember how many millions of dollars it was for the film, but it worked out to be, she only had something like 32 lines or something. And each line she got paid $60,000 for or something like that.
Holy shit. Goals.
But anyways, yes, exactly. But no, it was my favorite of the series. I really enjoyed it.
Hell yeah.
And she's great in it. And the guy who plays, I think he played Thor. I don't remember the actor's name, but also an incredible actor who plays the main sort of bad guy in the film.
Cool.
But you got to see it. Really great.
It's on my list.
Yeah. And I always wanted to see that show on HBO. It's about 5 years old now, Barry, and I'm watching it, and
I love Barry.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, Henry Winkler is fantastic in it, and Bill Hader is just brilliant, you
Yeah.
know, like, I mean, just the writing and that character. And I also did about 10 years of acting. So getting to like step inside of the acting class and like the abusive teacher role and like just the sort of cultiness of acting classes, and like they just nail it, you know. It's so right on. Yeah. And just such an interesting and great and funny and dark story. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm in like the end of the second season right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that show rocks. I also love the guy. I can't remember what his character name is now. The bald guy?
Yes. Hank.
Yeah, Hank.
Oh, he's so great. I'm in love with him.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's so, have you seen him in anything else?
I feel like I have, but I can't think of what at this point in time.
He's just so lovable and hilarious.
He's great. He's such a because he's ultimately like kind of a villain, but like he's so fun and so fun and flirty.
He's exactly. You nailed him. Yeah, that's it. He's so fucked up, but like so sweet, and you know, like there's a scene where Barry's like, and he's sincere. He's like, Hank, am I evil? And then Hank is like, of course you're evil. Yeah, like, you know. He's like, you're the most evil, like saying it in a way of like, it's the best thing in the world to be, you know, like you're the most evil. Yeah. He's so fun. Yeah. It's a great series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my latest.
Hell yeah.
What about you? You're always, God, you just.
I do be watching some stuff.
Couple things.
Well, as you know, I just recently returned from Tribeca. I think this is the first like major film fest I've ever been to. I've been to several, but only like little bitty guys. So this was my first like big one. Everyone local to New York seems to hate Tribeca, which I find interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that. And I lived in New York City for 20 years, and I didn't know that everybody hates it.
That just seemed to be my experience. And like the only locals that I found going to anything were like people who like do a thing, like people who write are journalists, are people who are distributors or like whatever.
Interesting.
And everybody else traveled there. So
right. Oh, wow.
That was my experience. But I did have the time of my absolute life. I basically planned this trip around seeing Joel Petrakis' new movie, Vulcanizadora. So Joel Petrakis, anyone who listens to the pod will know, is my absolute favorite filmmaker. I'm just couldn't be more obsessed with his work. So when I heard he was premiering his new feature there, I was looking at plane tickets within 5 minutes. So
and did it deliver?
It absolutely delivered. I actually saw it twice while I was there. I mean, it's such like a beautiful culmination of not only his previous work, but like the skills, and Joel and Josh Burge both star in it. And we haven't seen Joel act in a minute, but both of them, like, their talent has just like skyrocketed since the last time we've seen them together, for sure. And I also think this was one of Josh's best performances, and he's been in a lot of things since they've last worked together, but they just were so incredible in the film. If anyone's going to watch it, I would advise not to read anything about it. Of course, people always say that, but I really mean it. I did everything I could to not read anything, know anything. I'm friends with a lot of those guys, so like I've been, you know, in contact with them and hanging out with them like through the process of this film being made. So I had to try really hard to never know anything. So going in that I didn't know a single thing about what I was about to see, except who worked on it. I did know that.
Right. I love that.
So even for that reason also, I couldn't have not seen the premiere because so many articles and stuff are coming out about it. Like, things are already spoiled on Letterboxd. I've seen, like, I just couldn't have been dodging this information for much longer. And I did have emotional support present with me for the premiere. It was really awesome because the entire cast and crew, like all the way down to the bones, everyone came. So it was really, really fun. And then I had friends, past guests of the pod, old episode, Sam Adolfo was there, and future guests of the pod, Frank Mosley, were there with me, just holding my hand and comforting me while I absolutely cried my eyes out from beginning to end, just out of joy, out of everything that was happening on screen, sadness, everything. So it was just a beautiful experience for me.
I'm so glad. That sounds so great. I'm so glad that you could go and you could be there for the premiere. That's so exciting.
It was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Did you get to meet the filmmaker?
Yeah. Well, I knew a lot of them already. Joel's been on the podcast, so we have talked, we've talked online a lot. We've talked over Zoom, but I had never met him in real life.
Person.
So
how cool.
That was
so
fun.
Great.
And
that's so great.
Yeah, there were a couple people of the crew who I have just known online, and I did get to meet all of them in real. I've never felt more like a celeb than I did in the last week at Tribeca.
Everybody's like, ScreenVomit.
Yeah. It was really crazy. At Tribeca and outside of it, I just kept meeting people who were like, "Oh my God, you're ScreenVomit. That's amazing!"
Oh, that's so cool. That's so
never
cool.
felt more celebrity in my life. It's kind of overwhelming. I am a little too shy for that much attention, but it was still really cool in a way and surprising and fun. And yeah, so I saw Vulcanizadora twice, both times incredible. In the second screening, someone screamed during the movie at a certain point, which was so fun. And it was a man, let's say, and he tried to pass it off to, he was like, "Oh, is this girl who did it?" It was not that girl, okay? So
he was like, "Ah!"
Yeah, so that was really fun. And then, of course, there were Q&As and everything, and that was all really cool to see and be a part of. And after parties, I was at so many. I was an after party every day. It was crazy.
Sounds like a blast.
I saw a couple other movies I do want to mention as well. 2 shorts that were really, really, really good at Tribeca. Is Now a Good Time, which is Jim Cummings' new short. Longtime fan of Jim Cummings, but this movie, oh boy, it had me screaming in the theater. It's so bold and so much more daring than any of his previous work, and he has been daring in his previous work. So just to say, it's especially over the top and in an incredible way. And that's another one that I would say don't know anything going in, because every reveal was so fun. And then another short, Nepotism Baby. This is directed by Tij Doyen. Tij had another short that did Slam Dance and a bunch of other stuff maybe a year or 2 ago called Lollygag. And I was really in love with Lollygag. I believe that was on my best shorts from last year or the year before, whatever year it was on my year-end best shorts. So really good short, Lollygag. Nepotism Baby stars Betsy Brown, who a lot of people know, and she's going absolutely just giving it all in this short. She's going full on possession mode, insane. And
wow,
it's so fun. That one just had me, absolutely in awe in the screening, and was just really, really cool. So I don't know what it's doing next, but it's got to be doing something for sure.
Yeah, it'll be the short film of the day on ScreenVomit one of these days.
One of these days, although it wouldn't be the short of the day, but it may be up there. Short of the days are ones I haven't seen before. So that's my rule, is that it has to be a short I haven't seen before. So these now I've both seen.
Gotcha. Excluded.
Yeah, excluded, but I will be watching it again, I can tell you that much.
Cool.
Hopefully, if I ever do a screening again, a live screening, I would love to screen it sometime, because it's just really fun. It'd be really fun to watch with the group again. And those are my main things from Tribeca that I really, really loved. I saw a couple other things that were good or fine, but those are the main ones that I was obsessed with.
That kicked your butt.
That kicked my ass, yeah. And I just met so many people that that I'm a fan of over that week that I was there, that I'm longtime fans of, a lot of creators, a lot of filmmakers. Yeah, it was just really fun to meet everyone in person and hang out with everybody and hang out with pals that I know also, the Sob Noise guys, who I don't get to see that often, but I'm always happy when I do. And just all these pals coming together, I just had the most fun. I had an absolute blast. And I love New York City anyway, so I'm always happy to be there.
Fun.
I want to be
That's
there
so
as much as
awesome.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just had the best time. Tribeca rocked.
Good.
And I
Cool.
saw Mark Duplass on the street. I didn't say anything to him, but I saw him in real life, and that's just fun.
Oh yeah, I think I saw your Instagram.
Anyway, I had the best time at Tribeca, and that's my Tribeca review. And
That
my
sounds great.
and my what I've watched this week. We can roll into plugs. So what do you got to plug, or where can people find you online if they want to follow your movie, etc.?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Well, I have a website for the documentary called it's A Tale of Two Houses documentary.com. Also, if you're on social media, I have a Facebook page and Instagram with the same name, A Tale of Two Houses. I think actually the Instagram is A Tale of Two Houses doc. But if you put that in, you'll get there. Yeah, so that's a good way to keep up with what's happening with the film. Pretty active on social media with the film. And then my website, if you're interested, CHRISCARLONEcreations.com. And it's got lots of interesting stuff to look at, photography work, my film reel, and just news and things happening. So yeah, that's kind of my stuff.
You're in a bunch of bands too. Do you want to shout out any of your bands?
Well, sure. I sing in a punk band called Manslaw. And so that is a lot of fun. It's like classic 80s hardcore, except my style as the frontman is I'm almost like a lounge singer. Like I wear real loungy clothes and I play the theremin and the trombone, but I have a ton of energy and it's a really fun band. So,
and
it's a pretty new band. But besides that, I've got this persona that I've been doing for going on 20 years called Borts Minorts. And Borts Minorts is just a really crazy experimental performance art music project that you definitely should check out. It's started in San Francisco, did really well there, went on to New York City, did it there, then did it in Los Angeles, and it's still alive. It sort of has a life of its own. You just have to go check it out. I play a snow ski that I turned into a stand-up bass. Actually, it's right here. So yeah, it's one string snow ski that it's got a pickup on it. You could plug it in right here. It's got a volume knob.
Wow.
And so I sing through like a wireless headset mic, and I wear like spandex and big wigs. I have a huge wig collection. I think everybody should have lots of wigs just ready to go. Like if you go out of town, pack a few wigs, because if you're hanging out and there's nothing going on, you could at least put some wigs on, So I'm a big fan of wigs. So in the band Manslaw, I actually have 2 bags of wigs, and every song I change my wig. And so there's a lot of costume changes and wig changes, and it's really fun. Yeah. Both of them are fun. Yeah. So Borts Minorts has an Instagram. It's just like it sounds, BORTSMINORTS. So if you look that up, you'll be like, what? That's that guy? It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Hell yeah.
And you can just look it up on YouTube. There's tons of videos. And
that rocks.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for doing the pod with me today.
Oh my God, it was so much fun. And thank you for turning me on to the film. And it was so awesome getting to hang out with you.
Hell yeah. We were fast friends at the fest. And
totally.
Our saga continues.
Yes, that's right.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, We'll see everyone else next
All
time.
Right,
Bye.
Thank you for having me. All right. See you soon. Bye.